Hi.
I want to welcome everyone to Jackson again, and I'm with Jacqueline Farmer. We have been working on this global action session. So what I wanted to say is we're here to bring you some of the best voices and ideas and practices on how to elevate global talent and local storytellers in wildlife filmmaking and conservation. But first of all, we want to thank National Geographic Society for sponsoring this session. But I want to kind of call attention to this fact of today, this session is particularly important and urgent because some of you may know that the UN is opening a summit on the Convention on Biological Diversity today, and that ecosystem collapse may soon really overwhelm even climate change as a global threat. I think all of us are kind of on the front line of thinking about that. And so today, more than ever, we really need to elevate all of these local storytellers and get their critical perspectives on basically how are we thinking about our human relationship with wildlife and the ecosystems that keep us alive and our shared living planet. And we have to figure out how to do that faster. So what we're going to do is coming up with this session is we're going to have fantastic people who are on it. Our question to all of you as you watch is how can we as a community leverage this amazing Jackson wildlife community and help to and commit to accelerating the process, because I want to say this to all of you out there that you are uniquely positioned to help with this in every way. So at the end of the session, we're also going to unveil a major Jackson Wild initiative and commitment to building and accelerating global networks and perspectives. And we hope you can join one of the breakout sessions to help move all this forward. People are already around the room and going to be hosting these breakout sessions that begin right after this. So think about that. Think about, as you're listening to this, how you can help. And then I'm going to go on to the session because we've got a lot of great speakers and I want to make sure we have time. Just to introduce this again, for the past few weeks, as with all the action forums, Jacqueline and I have been in multiple conversations with members of the Jackson community about how to improve access to everything for these global storytellers. That's access to training and mentorship and apprenticeships. It's access to the latest equipment. It's access to professional connections and career pathways and to local and global showcases for their work. So what we want to start with here is some perspectives from the field. And for this, let me hand it over to Jacqueline. And we're going to talk about several people who are young working filmmakers who are on it. So here you go, Jacqueline.
Thanks, Brooke. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this great action session. So as Brooke was saying, for the past couple of weeks, more than that, actually, past couple of months, I would say, we've been thinking about how we can move from where we are today as an industry to where we would like to be tomorrow. And to think about that, we've been talking to a lot of people, and there's been a lot of movement on a couple of issues, particularly training and capacity building professional networks, and local and global distribution of films. So I want to start by welcoming 3 up-and-coming filmmakers who are going to talk to us about what the landscape looks like from their point of view and what they're thinking about doing to try and change it. So welcome, first of all, to Aishwarya. Hello, Aishwarya.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi,
Aishwarya is a 23-year-old wildlife filmmaker and presenter from India, and she recently hosted an 8-part digital series for Discovery Channel. And she's going to tell us about some of the obstacles she's faced as a young woman who's trying to get her career started in this industry. Over to you, Aishwarya.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It feels wonderful to be a part of such a great conversation, first of all. When it comes to challenges and obstacles, there were many. There still are, in fact. What I would like to start with is one of the biggest that I faced when I was starting about and trying to get into wildlife filmmaking. I wanted to, first of all, have a clear idea as to how this whole industry runs and how does one craft a story. So I wanted some training and mentorship, perhaps. So I reached out to a couple of people already working in the industry during my late teens, a couple of years ago, to see how I could probably assist them and learn the workings of the industry from them. But sadly, I didn't hear back at all, despite a number of attempts to follow up and see. I never heard back, and there was no response. So that was a bit disappointing. Then when it came to working with my first film, and I had to like really go ahead and make my first documentary, I absolutely had no idea how to start. So I turned to Google. And thankfully, the search engine helped a lot. And I had to learn everything from scripting to editing to color correcting, presenting, camera work, all of this put together. And that's how I made my first documentary on the vanishing wetlands of Mumbai. And when the film was put together, I felt, why not try my luck with a broadcaster? I mean, may work, may not work. So there again was my second challenge, because there's absolutely no database as such over here where you can go and find out who's working for which network, and to get emails or their contact numbers. There's absolutely nothing as such. And even when you try and get your foot in the door and you somehow access them, you realize that they want to work with established filmmakers. Okay, that's fine, but at least give us a year. Okay, and no one wants to even listen to a first-time filmmaker, let alone if you're in your 20s. It's worse. So there's no opportunity at all. That was again some amount of disappointment, but when some doors of networks closed, one opened up, and I did get to broadcast my first film on India's state broadcasting agency. So that was a huge moment for me as a young storyteller. Apart from that, there are challenges with funding, with access to equipment. And I really wish that there is a platform where all young storytellers can pitch their stories and to potential investors and even equipment manufacturers for a possible collaboration. And even as a presenter, there is this concept of you don't have an accent. And there's this thing with even for a show which is an Indian wildlife and mainly the target audience is Indians, there still is a need to have an accent as a TV on-screen talent. So that's something which I find a little bit weird, but nevertheless, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, right? So despite all these obstacles, I really cherish my journey that I've had so far. And I'm happy that each of these challenges made me grow as an individual and as a filmmaker itself. So I'm thankful to Jackson and to National Geographic for starting this conversation and doing this Action Coalition Forum today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ishwara. Those are really interesting points, really valid. And I hope you're going to be joining us later on in the breakout sessions to look at how we are going to be addressing a lot of those points that you brought up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, Federico Pardo. Federico has two hats. He's a conservation biologist and also a filmmaker, and Federico's from Colombia. Federico has quite a lot of concerns about the industry, but also some solutions. So over to you, Federico.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Well, the first thing I wanted to do, and hello, everyone, was I'm grateful. I want to acknowledge that I've been able to make it as a wildlife filmmaker over the past 10 years, since the first time I went to Jackson. And there are pathways. And through that, I also want to acknowledge society, because I recently became a Nat Geo Explorer, which granted me some money to tell the story of Colombia's most endangered monkeys. And I'm trying to do this, or I'm doing this blue chip immersive project to save these monkeys. So there are ways to do it. It's not always easy or straightforward, but we're getting there. But getting back to the main idea of the coalition, I wanted to touch on a few ideas. The first one, and these are all my opinions, it seems to me that the industry is more reactive than proactive. We're not catching the waves on time. Every time we have a problem to solve, whether it's inclusion, colonization issues, any of these, we're always a few years behind rather than tackling the problem from the get-go. And the biggest concern I have on this regard is that as the industry grows over the past 10 years that we've seen all over, the planet, it's crumbling down. The ecosystems are crushing, extinctions are happening. So it seems to me that we are not doing a great job. Of course, this is not to blame to the industry, but I think we are major key players on this issue, and we have to be more strategic and more straightforward when it comes to this. And at the same time, because of the growth of the industry, I believe that there's still a huge gap between these landmark series, big productions, and us as independent filmmakers in our regions. And even though we're trying to catch up, it's a rat race. It's impossible to catch up. Yeah. This is probably the nature of the beast, and we can't really fight it, and I don't think we should. But we're always trying to get up there, and then we're again a couple of years behind. So that's putting us behind. We can't. We're not as competitive in this worldwide industry, to say it somehow. But I think to bring it all down to some solutions, I think if this is the nature of the beast, I think we should harness what unites us all, which is how to make a better planet, or at this point, how to save it. That's what brings us together. Yes, there's differences, there's challenges, but we can make this planet a better place, and we should work towards that. And to that regard, I have a few ideas. I don't know if you guys have watched The Social Dilemma, the documentary, but I can't help about the same, hacking the system, but for good purposes. They did it for Brexit. They did it for elections in the US. Why don't we do it for conservation? We are storytellers. We have the tools at our hands. Let's put it to work. And another one would be adding local talent to your crews, even if it's to produce a complementary product as part of your big production, hoping that that little product stays in the local market, in the local networks, and that way we can also help these local filmmakers gain experience and communicate these projects in their country. Because, truth be told, most of these blue chip productions rarely make it into the communities where they were filmed. Thirdly, I think the capacity building in developing regions is great. The Jackson Hole Media Lab is a great initiative, and I would love to bring it to Latin America and have more people participating, and then eventually create an army of storytellers. And finally, Jacqueline, I think, touched on this at the beginning. How can we get our products, our media, our projects into the bigger distribution networks and platforms for two reasons. One, this will create leverage for smaller governments or developing governments. When they see themselves on the big screens, they are pushed to take action. But it also gives a certain pride to citizens of these countries when they see that their ecosystems or wildlife is being showcased. So for me, it's hard to just see the name landmark, blue chip, never seen before. It's like, well, there are things that are not landmark that have been seen before, but are still important to put on these networks so we can create leverage.
Great, Federico, and I vote for the Army of Storytellers. Federico is leading one of our breakout groups later on, so please join him. Those are some really great ideas. Over to Jahawi. Jahawi Bertoli is a National Geographic explorer, also from Kenya. He's an underwater and wildlife cameraman, also a musician and a composer. And Jahawi has a concept that Brooke and I find really interesting, what Jahawi is called fair trade filmmaking. Hi, Jahawi. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Rather than sort of echo a lot of the things that Aishwarya and Federico have said, which I truly believe in, over the last few months we've been talking, and as a sort of filmmaker in Kenya who's gone through a lot of difficulties in trying to figure out how can you make this a career, and how can you sort of tell the right stories, I remember a couple of years ago thinking that it was completely ridiculous that I thought I had to move to Bristol to work in filmmaking to come back to Kenya to be a cameraman, And kind of these concepts of, you know, holding the filming industry in sort of one little place and creating these stories. And, you know, I grew up watching all these incredible wildlife documentaries, but there comes a point when you realize that you've kind of lost connection with how the natural world really is, because you've made it seem like it's this incredibly pristine place, and you've forgotten that there's actually communities and people who live with them. And I know I've talked about this with quite a few people. It's like, you know, I've always thought I was a wildlife cameraman, but more recently I've been working on human films, like films to do with people and communities, because people can fly in and make these incredible films, but, you know, you're never actually making impact in the areas that you're coming into, and those people will never actually see what you've filmed. And recently in the film that we've just been working on, often after a while, communities actually look at filmmakers with this kind of, we don't quite know what you're up to. We've never, you know, there's been filmmakers coming in and doing all this stuff, and we've never seen it. Now, we can talk about change on a global level, and that's great. And, you know, the more people that we can move to want to change things is important, but often the communities that are at the forefront of these issues are never really considered. And that's a big thing, because, you know, often you've lost community knowledge, and there's a whole bunch of things that we don't know that the communities may know that will actually help us deal with issues, especially when it comes to human-wildlife interactions, you know, dealing with certain issues. And so through these last few talks, and sort of living in Kenya and feeling like I don't know how, you know, I want to be a wildlife cameraman, I want to be a filmmaker, but how do I reconcile this need to want to tell community stories and to get communities involved and tell those kind of things, but how can then I make a living to try and get these onto networks? You know, and how do you reconcile doing the right kind of filmmaking, what you think can really have true impact, to also trying to make a living and try and work in the systems that are out there to sort of get it into, let's say, you know, you're trying to look for distribution. And I mean, we're still working on it, but what's been incredibly interesting to sort of to think about, and this is why we, you know, through our talks, I was like, why can't we have a concept where, just as any other industry, we have fair trade filmmaking? Big production companies, you know, everything, you must have CSR budgets. There has to be things you can bring back to the communities. You know, we need to create a system that, you know, it's not that we're saying you're doing it wrong or you need to do it this way, this way, this way, but how can we create a system that all of a sudden, let's say, you know, we know that you're not going to come and hire a completely local crew because they haven't had that experience. But in Kenya, we have how many people coming here to film every year? Surely through that whole process, you would have started training people on the ground, you know. All of a sudden you can have, you know, people on BCAM, this, that, the other, and then next thing you know, you're actually training the local, you're promoting, you're creating wildlife cameramen where you'd have never known. I worked as a safari guide for a long time, and I've had like incredible Maasais who have lived in the Mara, who know the Mara better than anything else, who say, I want to be a cameraman. And you can imagine that effect of having people who live there going out and not having a time restricted limit to be able to go and film. Imagine the quality, imagine the stories that would come out of that. And I mean, that's just on one side, you know. On another side, and Corona showed us that we can't be flying around the world anymore like we were. Right. It's not sustainable. You know, we're championing the world, we're championing sort of a better life, and, you know, yet sometimes, you know, these films have huge carbon footprints.
Yes.
They'll never see Nat Geo. They'll never see Discovery. They don't know what you're doing. How is the filmmaking that we're doing really affecting that community? With this last film, this short film, and I'm so lucky that we're actually a finalist at this year's Jackson, but which is mind-blowing, but we chose to make the film in Swahili. Told from the eyes of Swahili fishermen, told from the perspective of all these interviews. We came to do a humpback whale film and ended up with a community film. And all of a sudden, you know, this film has, you know, we haven't been able to show it just yet as we wanted to, but you're now mobilizing communities to want to protect their environment. And, you know, we can all focus on it's the bigger story, but once you have a movement of a lot of small communities working together, then I think you can actually realize some incredible change. Mm-hmm. And then, like we discovered, all of a sudden they're telling you stories of things that you're like, whoa, we would have never found that out if we had just sort of come.
So good. That's, I mean, I will just say, Jahawi, thank you. And also, basically, the chat room is just going whoop, whoop, and sort of going, yes. I think this is an excellent point, and it really does bring it back to the idea that, you know, we're not just talking about global distribution, but that is useful. But as you say, absolutely, it needs to be much easier for local filmmakers to tell local stories that are seen by local communities and continue that flywheel of how are we thinking about our world, how we interact with it, how we interact with it on a local level, not just the blue chip that is someplace that is an imaginary universe that is pristine and beautiful, but no one ever goes there except apparently David Attenborough or whatever. That is not an accurate representation of the world we all know about. And I think that's the other thing, is this isn't just about, you know, it's the right thing to do, although it is, to have all these global perspectives, but it's also the only way we cannot fully appreciate the real picture, what is really true of our world and our place in it, and how we care for it and are interacting with it. So this brings me to, and you guys are all so fantastic, and I think there's a lot to keep doing with you, and I want to thank you, but I also want to bring in the next crew who is going to talk about this, who I know you guys are all working with, but thank you so much. And yes, our next gang is going to be talking to people who are helping this happen, which is Noel Koch from NEWK, and I'm just going to introduce everyone, and Fiona Tande and Martin Del Rio, and also, hi, Noel who helped us at the beginning. Yes. He's just been pulled in so many directions. But yes, and then Faisal, I think Faisal's going to be at the end of this too, but let me just get us started with this, because I think that Noel, I mean, everybody can watch a lot of the work of the Wild Women, but I think talking about this, you know, talking about the importance of elevating and training up and having local people be doing these projects. So, you know, which is something you're absolutely working on. And I know that people have probably seen a little bit of it, or hopefully, but tell us about especially what you're doing, and especially the Wild Women, which sounds like it was just so amazing. No, there you go.
There we go. There we go. There we go. Good evening. Thank you so much for this. It is amazing, and it's so good to see you and Jacqueline again. Following on from what the other three have said, and what a positive start, you know, to the session. I think I want to start off with my favorite saying before I start talking about the Wild Woman Media Lab. My favorite saying is, we are not a continent of rangers, guides, and people who sing for you when you jump off your safari vehicle. And that saying is one of the inspirations and one of the reasons why it is so important for us to take the scientists and the women scientists of Africa and place them on a pedestal and elevate them and raise their voices up, and to show the rest of the world that, you know, if you're looking for a story, if you're looking for an expert, there are scientists in Africa. There are Black African women scientists in Africa who have the most unbelievable stories to tell, who are passionate about conservation and wildlife. And you don't, and not that we're saying the work that our rangers and guides do is not important. It is absolutely important, but we are so much more than that, you know. So before you know, to talk about the Wild Woman Media Lab, I think I need to start off by really talking about Lisa and what she's done for us as an organization, NEWF. You know, one of the things that as we discuss and as we this panel or this program unravels, I think mentorship and access to mentors is going to be something that comes up quite often, and sustained access to mentors. And Lisa Sanford decided, you know, after our first year, decided that or announced that us in Southern Africa, NEWF would be announced that NEWF would be their first sister summit, global sister summit. And it wasn't just an announcement. Lisa has taken us under her wing. She's available for 3 o'clock in the morning calls. Her time, by the way, not ours. You know, it's not just about in name. She's been there. In January, I realized how hard she works. Where in DC, I've never been to so many meetings in my life, but it was in DC after last year where she invited us to come to Jackson early to shadow the media lab that takes place in Jackson, because having come to our Congress, she was inspired by an all-woman scientist panel that we had on at the Congress from across Africa. And she was like, you know, imagine if she was in a discussion, we were discussing about, imagine if we gave them the tools to communicate their science. Imagine if we didn't just wait for them to be placed in front of a camera or for somebody to use them as an expert, and if we gave them the tools to communicate their science. And so that was part of the inspiration for going along to HHMI Tanglebank Studios, talking to Caitlin at Nat Geo, and putting together this Wild Woman Media Lab. We had 10 women from 7 different countries in Africa. It was supposed to be an in-person event. COVID-19 showed us that we can make magic, even though we can't be together. I've never seen a sisterhood develop so magically all online. And what we did was instead of flying them in, we bought them all legacy packages. And so we bought them a camera, a tripod, a microphone, hard drives, and that kind of stuff, and sent it through. And coming back to the word partnerships, we were able to, through a group of mentors and friends and partners from the USA, India, the rest of Africa, put together a virtual training lab online. I mean, these young women, some of them had not touched a DSLR camera in their lives before the lab. On the Friday, Gunjan from India, who was doing the training on camera, was literally helping them open the box. By the following Friday, they had produced their first short microphone, and it's available in the Wild Woman Media Lab. I think I'm not going to go too much into detail. I think that's, again, just an example of, if you provide access, if you provide opportunity, and if you make it sustained, you know, one of the most important things that we've come to realize as an organization is, it's one thing creating opportunity. How do you sustain it? We did an underwater filmmakers lab, and one of the cinematographers came in, and he was talking to 2 of the cinematographers, one of which is smiling on the screen right now, whom we're very proud of, Fiona Tunde from Kenya. And he was saying, you know, a production company needs you to have a minimum of 200 hours underwater. You know, we had just got them to go through a whole month of 6 diving certifications, and yet they only had about 20 hours. How do we get Fiona up to 200 hours of diving? And so everything that we do here and everything that we've started, I think the most important thing is, for so many years, I used to go to all these festivals, and we used to have this one diversity and inclusion panel at all these events. And afterwards, everyone would go off into the sunset singing Kumbaya. We've done our bit for diversity and inclusion. And I think last year at Jackson, it was proved that if we just do it, we can get things started. I think an organization like National Geographic Society particularly has shown for so long through the Explorers program that if we just do it, these things can happen. And I think that's the most important thing that I want to urge everybody. And we can, we've got a lot of days and a lot of networking. We can catch up and we can go in depth about all the other stuff. But I think that's the sentiment that I want to raise here today.
That is fantastic, Noel. We're just so grateful for all of this. And I totally agree. I mean, the nice thing is, on the one hand, it's terrible that, for those of us who have ever had a chance to be at the amazing Jackson Lodge, it's beautiful and it's sad not to be there. But the great upside of this, the really fantastic part, is that the room is just so much bigger now. We are all in this room wherever we are. And that's why, and one of the things that I want to do is hand it over to Fiona too, and then Martin after, about how you were able to expand the room, which we can do now. And tell us about last weekend, and how you put together the Jackson, your Jackson weekend.
Right. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's so good to see all of you on this panel, and I'm so honored to be one of these guys. I couldn't have imagined last year that I'd be sitting here with all of you. How I came about this initiative, I don't know. It was just an idea, honestly. It was not anything grand. I was looking to do something with my time, and I happened to go on the Jackson website and saw that there was a call out to for anyone who wanted to have a local event. And I figured, why not? So first I approached Angama Mara, who I'd been in talks with for years about joining the the media department, and they were so gracious to agree to host the Inuan, or the whole summit. And then I went to Jackson and told them, here's the accommodation, here's a host that's so willing to do it. How you willing to come in? And they were like, whatever you need, we'll help with. And that's how this came about. And then I went to my friend who's a producer down here called Faith, and she helped just put everything together. And we invited basically filmmakers that I really felt would, if they got the opportunity I got last year, would be so far, with the networks and the mentors and just the opportunity that I got. So I contacted each and every one of them, or rather, it was a collaborative effort. We nominated them, brought them out here, and now we're making a film in 5 days, 6 days that we need to submit tomorrow. And yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing right now, just crazy editing, and looking forward for everyone to get to see what these filmmakers have come up with, because it's their stories, it's different stories than what we constantly see on TV, which is exciting. And it's a chance to show the world that there's still stories to be told, especially from an African point of view.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. I can't wait to see what you guys came up with. And Martin, I hear you had a lot of people come and look at yours too. Tell us about how you did yours in Santiago.
Yes, hi everyone. It's my first time here in Jackson. Thanks for the invitation. It's an honor too. Well, I'm Martín del Río from Chile. I'm the founder of and CEO of Ladera Sur, the most watched nature media here in Chile. And in Ladera Sur, some time ago, we proposed to organize the first wildlife and environment festival here in Chile, and we called Santiago Wild Fest. And in the beginning, this festival, it was the last year when the COP, the United Nations Climate meeting in Chile, and when we had when we had everything ready, here in Chile, there was a social crisis, and the cup was moved to Madrid, Spain. So the festival was postponed to March. We have everything ready. All the tickets were sold, and the pandemic happened. For the second time, it was suspended, the festival. But the third time's lucky, and we decided to do it online. And it was last week. And we got over 43,000 plays and connected over 15,000 people. And it was a great challenge, and we learned a lot about how to do it online. And there's a lot of benefits to being online. And we reached many people. We reached many more people from different cities and countries, like Jackson Wild is doing now. And I think it was a great experience. But we have the support of big partners like Smithsonian Channel and the Jouberts of Natillo and also Jackson. I want to do thanks to Lisa and all the Jackson team who have trust to us, and I hope to continue to grow. But I think the collaboration has been the key to make this project possible. It's been a great challenge for us to organize such a great, this big event for a small country with a growing industry. This is what we saw with the festival when we received more than 80 projects from Chile alone. And when we believe there's a big opportunity for storytellers, not only in Chile, but in all Latin America. I think it's very important to unite our region and show the wildlife to the world. For example, the pumas of Torres del Paine here in the Patagonia of Chile have been a great ambassador for being able to a powerful story, to tell the powerful story. They have made programs in Natillo, Smithsonian Channel, and several channels in European countries. Chile now is Chile is the country with the largest coastline in the world, so many marine projects are now appearing, especially about the whales. Mm-hmm. But I think we're still living in a small industry with many opportunities. But I believe now is the moment in which we have to put this subject strong than ever. And I think the documentaries of wildlife, they are great seeds for reach more people. Absolutely. It's very impressive. People here in Chile are contacting us more and more because they see in us a window to show their places visible, their problems, to show the wildlife. But I think there's a generation issue problem. Young people have another perception of life, and I think that's the good thing that they're gonna be. In the future, they're going to make the decision. So that's my little story about my experience. But I want to again thanks for this opportunity, and there's a lot of growing here in Chile and also in Latin America.
Thank you so much, Martin, and it's wonderful to have you here as your first Jackson experience. Thanks so much. Santiago Wild sounded amazing, and that's one of the things we've been thinking about a lot is how can we reach more people, and I think one of the big obstacles that we have is this problem of distribution. How can filmmakers get their films seen? And I think those partnership events are really great events to enable national filmmakers to show their films to national populations. And it's something we've been talking to Faisal Malik about. Faisal's a wildlife photographer and filmmaker from Kenya. Hello, Faisal. He's working in partnership with the Kenyan Film Commission on a new training program for natural history filmmakers. And he's also doing some work on trying to secure some programming slots with Kenya's national television so that Kenyan filmmakers have a place nationally to show their films. Over to you, Faisal.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity. And I think it's really great to be here on Jackson and talk all these exciting and new opportunities. I just wanted to stress that I think it's really important for filmmakers from host nations of where animals or nature is found to tell their stories as well, because this gives a fresh angle to stories, different ways of telling stories as well. Last year, we started a project with the Kenya Film Commission on, there's a documentary we're doing, and unfortunately, I can't give you too much about it, but there's a documentary we're doing, and we're also publishing a book with augmented reality for them. And out of the locations, when the representatives of the Film Commission came in, they would ask us, how's it going? And they realized the potential of storytelling out there, that it's in abundance. There's wildlife, there's culture, and what have you. But only, unfortunately, just a handful of Kenyan filmmakers could actually genuinely call themselves natural history filmmakers in an industry that's quite vibrant when it comes to filmmaking. So we got chatting about it, and they asked me what is the problem. So why aren't filmmakers, wildlife filmmakers out there as many as should be for the Kenyan industry? So we realized the problem is capacity building. So you do have filmmakers, but they don't have the hours, they don't have the experience on using some of the big cameras, if I could say. So I floated an idea to them that perhaps we could look at a masterclass and develop a capacity building workshop sort of program where we would select the numbers we're looking at right now. It's still early days, is like 70 people. Take them out there, give them hands-on course on filmmaking, wildlife filmmaking out there. At the end of it, they break out into groups, say about groups of 7, and produce their own content. So they come out with a documentary. Then that documentary, you'd have 10. You pit those documentaries against each other at the local film festival here, International Film Festival. That's called Kalash International Film Festival. That's run by the Kenya Film Commission. So they would compete against each other there. And of course, then you have the overall winner who's selected. And the winner then gets funding from the Kenya Film Commission now to produce content, and they have to come up with that. So again, you're teaching people how to come together, form production houses to work. They're getting funding to do their own thing, which again, they can go and sell out there on different platforms. Again, now the challenge you have is where you're going to show the content. In Kenya, unfortunately, which is unfortunate, that a lot of natural history content is not shown. I mean, a lot of people, if you're on satellite TV, then you can pick stuff off Nat Geo, but local broadcasters aren't showing that at the moment. The Film Commission has engaged one of the local broadcasting stations to start showing content. And just recently, again, I've got in touch with the Film Commission again to perhaps look at the possibility of giving space to natural history programmers to showcase their work there. It's still work in progress. It's still early days. We're looking at doing this on a county level. So it's not just a selected region of the country. We hope to do this across the board. Like Jahawi earlier mentioned, that imagine a Masai in the Mara who's there every day, has got no limitations, has a chance to film. So that's what we want to create. We're looking for partners. We're looking for people to come forward and work together with. Hopefully after this, Jackson Wild and the Film Commission and myself, we can sit down and just rack our brains and see what we can do about this. But besides that, I'm just going to drop in my email address in the chat. If any of you feel that you want to help or be part of this, you're more than welcome. But I think it's really important. I think it's really important because much as we say we want to bring in work on an international platform, but the bitter truth is locally there's not a lot of experience to showcase stuff on that. So hopefully through these workshops and master classes, we'll be able to get more people, we'll be able to get more experience, and those 2,000 hours that someone needs to show will come out of such programs. So I'm just going to type in my email address and take it on from there. I guess over to you, Jacqueline. I believe I had 5 minutes.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you so much, Faisal. We've got so much
Yes.
so much ground to cover, so many great ideas. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone who wants to will get in touch with Faisal. Collaboration is key to a lot of these things. Thank you to you, Fiona, Martin, Noel, Faisal. Absolutely wonderful. Some great ideas, some great programs, really fabulous. And I hope we can talk to you all later in the breakout sessions. So we are moving on with a case study. With a remarkable woman called Vanessa Berlovitz, who is here with us. Hello, Vanessa.
Hello.
Hello. It's a bit of an uphill battle for lots of filmmakers to apprentice with the best, but it's something that you, Vanessa, are working on changing. So that everybody, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening in know who you are and what you do. Vanessa is an Emmy Award-winning producer and filmmaker at the BBC with the NHU for many years, but started up her own company, Wildstar Films, which has, I have to say, a unique ethos, I think, in the business. And she's come to tell us all about it and a new series that she's producing for National Geographic.
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me onto this incredibly inspiring panel. I just, everything that, hearing the young people at the start of the panel has just consolidated everything that I know in my heart we need to change. And, I stand sort of guilty as charged as being part of the Bristol Mafia. I was very fortunate. I worked on many great landmarks like Planet Earth and Frozen Planet, and travelled extensively with David Attenborough. And, that I'm proud of what those series achieved, but there was something deep down that didn't feel right, because we always benefited enormously from extraordinary field knowledge and talents of people that you would, work intensively with and then go back, and then another crew would come out and benefit from that again, and there was no continuity and no giving back. And that was something when my husband and I set up Wildstar just a couple of years ago. We were fortunate. We went with Disney Nature to make an elephant film, and we got the chance to actually live as a family out there. And I think that had a profound impact, because I built friendships and meaningful relationships with many people, and started to understand the incredible wealth of storytelling ability and variety of voices that I just felt. I sort of started to look back at my past work and go, it's so singular, it's one perspective, it's a great perspective from one of the, if not the greatest communicator in our industry, has built this wonderful world of blue chip nature. But I was hearing stories that were exciting me just as much, thinking, how do we bring these into our world? And I think going back to Faisal's comments, who I'm desperate to connect with, we identify there's a real challenge that people don't get the opportunities to get trained and get their hands on the high level, top level cameras. So what's so exciting is there are commissioners that are commissioning Landmark, like National Geographic, like Janet and Vissering, who really cares about this, who, we came up with a concept of Queens, which was to look at female leadership in the animal world. But right from the start was, well, can we address what's going on behind the camera as well? We're putting the spotlight on female animals, but what about the female voices within our industry? And it was just really clear, you can count the number of top female DPs, even in Landmark, only on one hand. And and let alone more diversity than that, there's nothing. So it felt like there was an immediate opportunity with the backing of a major commissioner to do something profoundly different. And I was fortunate enough to come out to Jackson and meet Lisa and spend time with her, who just basically kicked me up the arse and just said, just do it, just do it, just build it into every shoot and make it happen and don't ask. And actually, Janet's been backing us all the way and finding ways to do this. I went to the Explorers event and was blown away by what the society's doing. And already they are sponsoring so many more voices. And I'm looking at these people going, there's so much talent out here. How do we bring it into Landmark and change the face of Landmark television? So how we set up Queens was quite different. We've got an enormous number of young mums. All our top senior and production management have children under 2. Which is kind of different, and that's required really flexible approaches to working. We appointed the 2 top female directors of photography, Sophie Darlington and Justine Evans, the very best in the business. They're not just top as females, they're top in the industry. And we put them onto our top creative team, so they have a huge voice in the shaping of the series. And we said, will you buy into this philosophy and help us train up the next generation? They absolutely have given 180, 200% and have signed up for this. So they selected 2 women who we're giving bursaries to within our production. Red have come on board to give those young women access to top cameras. And so it's just sort of snowballing. But I just want to talk about a profound shift that has happened in that the plan was to gradually roll this out to giving apprenticeships in the field to local talent, because this was, we felt, the big final missing piece. And we had lots of plans in place, and then COVID hit. And we suddenly went, we can't go. We can't actually send Sophie. We can't send Justine. So people like Faith, who I know is in the audience here, and Manu, who we'd started to talk to, who's a very talented Kenyan cinematographer, we suddenly said, okay, over to you. You're actually taking on this Landmark shoot, and you're going to do it, and you're going to direct it. And Sophie, basically, and Justine worked remotely and trained them over the internet. And gave feedback via Frame.io. And what we started to see was a magical thing where this amazing bond, Sophie's since blown out and worked directly in the field with Faith and Manu, but there is this incredible relationship that has built that is translated. And I just want to say to all the kind of, if there are any other production heads out there, this works. You know, it felt high risk, if I'm honest, but the reality was we're getting phenomenal material. We're getting different material. It feels different. And, you know, magic is happening in the field whereby Faith is indirectly related to one of the top elephant researchers who's working in Amboseli with Cynthia Moss. So they already had a connection not only to the elephants and the land, but to each other. And there was a real sense of she got much more time than we would have done, because it's much more meaningful for local people to help, and they could feel that you know, something was changing. And I don't want to hog time here because there's so many more interesting young people to speak. But the thing that I felt was really profound was I listened to a soundbite that Manu recorded where he said he felt this was the first time that a meaningful training program had happened, whereby people from the West weren't just coming in and reaping the fruit, we were actually sowing the seed. So on the basis of how successful this experiment has been, we're looking at apprentices from in-country attaching to all of our shoots. And going back to Faisal's point, we're looking at how can we build separate masterclasses where we effectively open up our production as an academy, where we say, well, we've got all these big shoots over the next 3 years. Who in country could benefit most? Who can we bring into that world to give them access to the training, to let them use proper cameras? And hopefully, Red have said, they will leave legacy cameras in the way that, absolutely NUF has been pioneering. But they would work with us, our team as well, to leave these legacy cameras for young filmmakers in country. So I'm really excited. I hope that's what WildStar wants to do, is to be attached to projects that have impact and change things. It's important that we make great, beautiful films that lots of people see, but it's absolutely vital, as Jahawi was saying, we've got to change the industry fast. We've got to bring authentic local voices into this, into our world.
Great. Great. This is so exciting. Okay, so I know we're running close to time. I hope everybody can still stick around because we have the room for another half an hour. But if anybody needs to go away, tell us if you need to go away. But I am going to introduce another couple of people. We've talked about a lot of things, a lot of things that are happening in the field. And the great news is that there are also these people popping into this room. Here they are, Bill and Kat and Caitlin and James, all of these great people who are also thinking about these powerful institutions that have the ability to help with this. How can we keep making sure that we're elevating this? And I know that there's a lot of work happening here. So you guys, I'm going to say hi to all of you, and I'm going to start with Caitlin and say, many of you know Caitlin Yarnell, who is the Chief Storytelling Officer and my buddy of NGS, who oversees these grants and storytelling and everything. But Caitlin, tell us about what is the most exciting thing? Because I know you've got a lot going on, but what are you feeling at this moment?
It's hard. Superlatives are hard, Brooke. But I just say, what a great discussion. And I feel just such feelings of pride. You all got to hear from Jahawi and Federico, but I was watching the chats come in, and I see Sylvia and Mumun and Alize. We're building a huge community of people who are explorers. And basically, to just demystify that, if you get a grant from us, you're an explorer. And it's just such an amazing way to build our community and find people around the world. And I'd say I'm super excited about that, not just because we get to give monetary grants, but then you become part of a community where a lot of this magic happens. The other things we're working a lot on are capacity building. We've been working on a program called Field Ready, along with our partners at National Geographic Channel, to build really a boot camp and mentorship to try to diversify this field that we're all in. And we also have a program called Second Assistant that works with still photographers in the same way. And then finally, the only thing I'll say, because I know we want to get to the discussions, are that none of this is possible without partnership. Obviously partnership with Jackson Wild, but with Noel and NUF, and with Vanessa and her team on WildStar. And really, I just feel like we are building a coalition. And I think as National Geographic Society, we're not just funders. We don't want to be that. We want to be a nexus and a hub to find talent, build talent, and really just make sure that we can help distribute as needed.
Great. Okay, this is a speed round. James, you are up. But tell us about, you are between Love Nature and Blue Ant and all of these things. So you actually are sitting at this interesting place where you are both an executive producer on the production way and also thinking about it as a programmer.
Yeah.
So what should be happening? And I know you've been thinking about this and actually have some really big thoughts about how to do things.
Well, what's interesting is that I'm finding out is, after going to NUF last year, that was very eye-opening in a lot of ways. And then speaking to people like Fiona and Jahawi and at the mentor-mentee Zooms that Jackson Wild is doing, and reflecting, I know we don't want to get into it, but getting into the current state of affairs in our own country, I just started thinking about, well, we have to, from a network perspective, we have to change this. This has to be network driven. This shouldn't be something that we just rely on production companies to figure out how to do better. Lo and behold, I wasn't remotely alone, and I found that out. And so it's just amazing to be a part of this. And I think the other thing is what I've been working on is a work in progress, and Blue Ant has been very, very receptive to that. And so I shared my ideas with them. It turns out of course, they have their own diversity inclusion initiative that they're working on, and they're starting all sorts of seminars and forums to that effect. So what I'm trying to do at Blue Ant is now going to very readily dovetail into a greater Blue Ant initiative, and I think that will help us a great deal getting funding, setting aside, getting the ability to put our money where our mouth is, and I'm looking forward, because this is a work in progress. We're trying to get from proposal to policy that I will get a lot of great feedback here and really bring this in for a landing within the next few weeks. So I know we're short on time, so I'm just going to kind of cut ahead to some of the main things we're thinking of, and a lot of them are, of course, echoes of what have been said before. Which the first one is going to be a mandate for people of color, people from underrepresented communities, women, members of the LGBT community to appear in positions of authority and expertise. And that doesn't mean necessarily scientists on camera. It means also characters. We do a lot of human character driven content, and making sure we have a good representation of people there, and narrators as well. And like many have mentioned, a diversity requirement in hiring, I think, is key. And that is, when I started looking at this, I started thinking, what is the impediment? We all want to do this, but why does Noel feel like we all sing Kumbaya and then forget about it? And of course, it is the risk, and that's what Vanessa was referring to. That we have tight budgets and tight timelines, and any one thing that goes wrong can screw everything up. So people tend to go with what they know, and so we need to be able, as a network, to provide a safe way that production companies can take risks, and that is ultimately going to mean money earmarked for local hiring, sometimes redundant local hiring. If we can't find somebody to be that crew member, we bring a crew member, and then we hire somebody that we're not sure if they will work as a crew member locally, and that will then help bring that person up, train them, give them access to this network. And I think that, for that, it's key for me that we're not talking about internships and apprenticeships or drivers or fixers, that we're talking about ACs and coordinators and second cameras and people who get the hands-on experience and get paid as staff. I think that's very important to have that distinction. And then, and so that's really, I think, how we kind of mentioned this, to break the cycle, to crack open the system. Because once we do this, then people will be known qualities, and then there's no risk. And so we just have to crack it open and make that happen. Yes. The final thing I wanted to mention, and this is something that we're trying to hatch in connection with Love Nature Digital. We have quite a growing digital department, and Steph Atlas there and I are attempting to create some, we don't know what it's going to be called yet, guest creator position, several openings per year for local creative talent to produce content that will air on Love Nature Digital, on one of our digital platforms. And we can assist, we can mentor, we can help people with editing, music, and get a fund together to help finishing costs for that. And then from there, those people have a product that they can share. And also then hopefully from that pool, we can develop a Love Nature fellow that we can then have represent Love Nature at organizations like this. So that's very quickly that in a nutshell, just because we're short on time. And I think the last thing is that, being from a network, we kind of have to prove that that it is good for us. And a lot of people have already touched on that. And that's key to the way I'm communicating this with Blue Ant, is that the fresh perspectives, the new ideas, the new talent, all of that is going to come through inviting new people into the system. And so if we're going to stay fresh and competitive as a network, then we have to do that. So
Great.
I can move on.
Great. Thanks.
Is that
James.
fast enough?
Yes. We're all like going time, because I do want to show some other things. But and Catherine Collins from the State Department, I want to call you out quickly because I know that you also, everyone is here and running. But I think that, if you want to just tell us a little bit about the American Film Showcase and all the things that the State Department is doing to actually keep bringing people here.
Absolutely. And hi, Noel. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. So I am at the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State and oversee film and television exchange programs, part of larger cultural exchange programs. And also this is the Bureau that does Fulbright in education. And one of the great experiences that we just recently, programs that we recently did, is that we partnered with Noel, our U.S. Embassy in South Africa partnered with Noel as part of this great initiative of supporting these 7 women scientists and telling their important stories. We do these programs all around the world and work closely with our embassies, and our partner to implement these programs is USC School of Cinematic Arts. We're now in our 9th year. And we get to work with great talent from the United States in all fields, and also with international and local storytellers. And I think, James, what you were saying about networks, it is all about networks. It's about making these connections. It's about building on partnerships, figuring out how to connect people. We were really fortunate to work with 2 American documentary filmmakers, and Ramona Diaz and Patrick Shen, who've been doing these production workshops together all around the world. And this one was their first virtual one. All of our programs have gone virtual. And so, as you were saying earlier, Brooke, it's actually really exciting that we're able to now have these conversations and really expand and open the room, open the conversation. And so American Film Showcase, we will be working with 60 embassies in this next year, and really would love to figure out how to replicate what we did with Noel, continue what we did with Noel, and look forward to really figure out how we can do this kind of thing in different parts of the world. Again, it's all about empowering the local storyteller, but also creating these connections, also the networks on ground, but also these international networks. So important. And so it's a privilege to work in this space, and look forward to learning from you all how best we can partner in the future.
That's great. Thanks, Kat. And Bill, hi. I wanted to bring you in, Bill Gardner of PBS, because I know you're thinking about this a lot. And one of the things that we've been talking about is your showcases too, how you might think in all the ways that PBS can do it. I don't know if you guys are hearing the echo, but hi. let me let you say it.
Well, I just muted you, so I guess so. Thank you. I think what we've heard from everybody here is just how multi-layered these efforts are. I mean, it has to exist at every single node on the circle of things that we all collectively want to do. And I will say that it's a really valid criticism to say that these conversations have happened in the past. It does feel different now. I think things that are happening in the States are driving some of the decision makers to take things more seriously, but it does feel like it's different. And it's really great to hear things from James and knowing what's going on at the Geographic Society and at the channel, that there really is a commitment, because some of these things do have to happen at the network level. We're relying on people like Vanessa and the amazing work that she's doing, and other production companies who are really leaning into this to help find people and give them opportunities. But then we at the network level have to find somewhere that the work can be seen. And I think that's a really important thing that we think about. It's really a good thing to train makers. We need to do that. It makes the stories more interesting. It makes it better. It makes it cheaper. But I think the challenge that some of us have talked about is, if we've identified some really great talent, of which there's a huge representation here at Jackson, where's the avenue that their work can be seen? And that's something that's on us at the network level. I think what's interesting about PBS is we're really good about this thing domestically because we have so many local stations, and we have avenues like PBS World, we have strands like Nova and Nature and Independent Lens and POV that are opportunities for that kind of work to be seen on. But I think one of the really exciting things about how the industry at large is evolving, we felt that there was a democratization of storytelling through access to gear and equipment and people like Red giving their cameras out. But now in the digital space, a lot of us are really expanding where we can be. We of course have the streamers, but in the PBS world, we have enormous digital offerings that exist in multiple places. We have a PBS Docs channel on Amazon. Geographic is doing things as well. Discovery is doing things as well. And I think that more and more we're leaning into trying to combine the commissioning of that. I think, kind of the inside baseball of it is that some of these networks, they work on a stovepipe. There is the digital arm, and then there is the linear arm, and they're coming together more now because content is content. Stories can go together really, really well. And I think that certainly at PBS, we're trying to be a lot more comprehensive and holistic in how we're trying to tell stories. Brooke and I, early in my career at PBS, made a series, Earth, a New Wild. And the whole point of that was, it goes to what many people said at the beginning of this session, is you cannot divorce humans from the picture of wildlife. It's just, you can't do it. And, the idea of the old joke of the beautiful landscape, if you turn the camera around, there'd be a lodge behind you. We can't tell that kind of stories anymore. And at PBS, that is the centerpiece of what our natural history commissioning strategy is we really have to be telling these types of stories. And we all know that in conservation as well, human development goes right alongside with everything else, because that's really driving a lot of the issues that are there. We're trying to highlight that stuff. So I think that all the work that everybody's doing on the storytelling level, at the production company level, what it really rests with us at the commissioning level is to change how we think editorially. And we're trying to do that, and I know others are trying to do that as well, to provide opportunities and access to tell the stories differently. It might have been you, James, who said, it's not enough to have diverse faces on camera if they don't have agency. The days, I will not name names, but it's not that long ago where we would get pitches like, oh, it's diverse, look at the people carrying this stuff, or here we picked up a local scientist, or we had a local guide and we asked him where to find the pangolin. That's not what we mean. Where is the agency? Let's call people experts because they are experts. Jahowie said that too. People who are on the ground, the Maasai who are there, they know more about it than people who might 10 years ago be flown in from the UK, from the US, from France, wherever, to provide expertise on the locales. People are there. And I think the more that we are telling those stories in that comprehensive way, it all works together and it runs together. And I think the more that we can collectively think about this stuff, and again, let's find the talent. They're there. The excuses we hear from some folks well, it's really hard to find the talent. No, it's not. You're not working hard enough. And I think that some of the things we're doing here at Jackson are going to be talking about shared databases. I think that's one of the wonderful things about institutions like this. Janet and I are competitors in the commercial world. We're personal friends, but we're also looking at this together. We will all work with the same people. Same with Blue Ant. We work with the same folks, and we want to work with the same folks, and we're meeting people here, and we can really work together to find avenues, not just to give people jobs, but to give them the work that they do exposure. And the last thing I'll say is, we want to have an impact with the work that we do, at PBS at least, and I know others feel this way. We want to have impact with the works that we leave behind. So if we're going to be filming all over the world, what are we leaving behind? And if it's helping to train up staff that's there that can be the person who picks up the phone and goes and covers a story for us next time, that's good. It's also treating the communities better that we're there. It's, it was called out earlier that, I was an international field producer, and I was cognizant of this, that these folks aren't going to see what we shoot. So we would always try, to the degree you can, maybe you just cut together a short, take the time to show people what you just filmed with them.
Yep.
Nature and wildlife in the world is not a theater for us to look at. We're a part of it, and we need to, think that way.
Great. So great. Thank you so much. And okay, so all of you, thank you so much. And I want to pick up on this point that we're all talking about and take it back to, throw it to the whole room. I know we're way, way over, but who cares? Because it's important. Now, what I want to say to the whole community is to echo what Bill is saying, what everybody's saying. This is a special community. So the whole point is now, what can we do? We've spent years at the lodge. I know we've been talking about what we can do to elevate filmmakers. And so what I want to unveil is there's something that we think can help. And that is that Jackson Wild is going to introduce something called the Jackson Wild Collective, which is a database and an ongoing forum for all of these opportunities. And we are going to launch this thing by the end of the year. We swear it, right, everyone? So I want to put a special thanks and shout out to the team at Her Wild Vision who helped us mock something up. And the point of mocking something up is to get us to all spark this conversation. So thank you to Morgan and Jamie and Sarah Joseph for putting this together. But what we want to do is actually use and leverage this fantastic community, Jackson Wild, all of you here, to help us make it useful and to help us make it well used so that we all commit to really leveraging the power of this unique community to connect and catalyze and change the way the world sees the world, which is what we do here. So please go to some groups. I wish we had time for questions, but let's go to the groups and mix it up there. And next year, we hopefully meet in real life, or even if we do it in this big everywhere in the world in all time zones way, we can look forward to sharing some more success stories about what came from this and how we can move this forward. And again, there's rooms all over, little campfires all over with all the breakout rooms. But I know Jacqueline and I want to thank Mel.
Yes, thank you, Mel.
Mel,
Thank you,
Judd.
Mel.
Yes, thank you. And Lisa and everyone here. But again, I mean, I feel the warmth of this room, even though we are not all at Jackson. It really is a fantastic community. And no matter what jobs everyone has, the amazing thing is that everyone cares about the same things. As Bill was saying, you know, people may be competitors in this role or that role, but the truth is we all want the same thing, which is to, you know, to really open up ways for us to see, understand, care about the world, care about each other. And it is time for us to just do this as fast as we can. So thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Everyone.
Thank you indeed, all our participants, all our speakers, wonderful. And please do, if you have ideas for the database of how you'd like it to look or work, please, that's table 5, Sarah and Gunjan will be there. You know, please give us some help with that, because it's an important tool that we need to.
Yep. And thanks again for National Geographic for sponsoring, but everyone for being here and making the extra time. But talk and let us know how we can make this better, because it's all up to us. So thank you again. Bye.
Bye-bye.